The Rapid Geriatric Assessment was developed by the Geriatrics Division of St. Louis University as a relatively quick method of screening older adults for frailty, loss of muscle mass, or sarcopenia, as well as issues related to nutrition and cognitive function. It is funded by the federal government's Health Resources and Services Administration and is part of the Geriatric Workforce Enhancement Program. The goal of this program is to improve the health of older adults in Missouri by training primary health care providers in geriatric medicine. There are 3 overarching objectives or goals of this video. 1. Describe the purpose of the 5 components of the Rapid Geriatric Assessment. 2. Define frailty, sarcopenia, malnutrition, and cognitive impairment in older adulthood. And 3. Identify some best practices for administering each of the Rapid Geriatric Assessment components. The Rapid Geriatric Assessment is free for healthcare professionals to use and distribute. It consists of 5 components: the Frail Scale to assess for frailty, the SARC-F Scale to assess for sarcopenia, the Simplified Nutritional Appetite Questionnaire or SNAQ to assess for malnutrition, the Rapid Cognitive Screen to assess for cognitive impairment, as well as an inquiry about advanced directives. The Rapid Geriatric Assessment is free for healthcare professionals to use and distribute. It consists of 5 components: the Frail Scale to assess for frailty, the SARC-F Scale to assess for sarcopenia, the Simplified Nutritional Appetite Questionnaire or SNAQ to assess for malnutrition, the Rapid Geriatric Screen to assess for cognitive impairment, as well as an inquiry about advanced directives. The Rapid Geriatric Assessment is free for healthcare professionals to use and distribute. It consists of 5 components: the Frail Scale to assess for frailty, the SARC-F Scale to assess for sarcopenia, the Simplified Nutritional Appetite Questionnaire or SNAQ to assess for malnutrition, the Rapid Cognitive Screen to assess for cognitive impairment, as well as an inquiry about advanced directives. The Rapid Geriatric Assessment, or RGA, can help healthcare providers quickly identify medical issues that are more prevalent in older adulthood. This screening tool can be administered by trained physicians, nurses, certified nursing assistants, gerontologists, and other healthcare providers working with older adults who may be at risk for the conditions included in this screening tool. Concerning scores on any of the individual screenings included within the RGA should trigger a referral for further assessments and management by members of the older adults medical team. The goal of the RGA is to detect frailty, sarcopenia, malnutrition, and cognitive impairment. Early detection can often prevent further decline by helping the older adult obtain treatment, with the ultimate goal of potentially reversing or delaying the progression of the decline. We are looking at the top of the RGA screening tool with the first set of information you will be asking the older adult you are screening. In general, you are free to make notes on the form as you complete the assessment. When completing the assessment questions, you will circle the older adult's responses and scores on the form. For those of you who are working with SLU and using carbon copies, the white copy will go to the older adult and the yellow copy will go to SLU. Look at the information requested at the top of the assessment. You will leave the ID number blank. Although biological sex and gender identity are separate and distinct constructs, for the purposes of this form, you can treat sex like gender by asking the older adult, "What is your gender?" Additionally, you will ask them their age. Do you have a primary care physician? And their ethnicity. Frailty is the diminished ability to carry out important activities of daily living, or ADLs, under stress. ADLs are basic self-care tasks such as walking, feeding, bathing, dressing, and toileting. The presence of frailty predicts dementia, hospitalizations, institutionalization, falls, and fractures in community-dwelling adults. Early detection is critical. Identifying frailty early allows the older adult to work with their healthcare team to establish care goals and more successful interventions. Early detection may also delay the onset of disability, slow the progression of dependency, and improve outcomes. The Frail Scale is a 5-item yes or no questionnaire. It has been validated or shown to be accurate with populations of older adults all around the world. Scores on the frail scale range from 0 to 5, with a higher score indicating more frailty. A score of 0 indicates a healthy older adult. A score between 1 and 2 indicates pre-frail or early decline, and a score of 3 or more indicates decline or frailty. When administering this scale, it is important that people answer the questions based on how they usually feel most of the time, not just on the day of the office visit or when they're being administered the screening test. The frail questionnaire is pictured on this slide. Before you begin the questionnaire, it is a good idea to introduce the scale questions by saying something such as, "We're going to have a brief conversation about your health," or "Let's talk about your health." The first question assesses fatigue. Although the question states, "Are you fatigued?" if the older adult does not seem familiar with the word fatigued or does not readily answer, you can also rephrase this to, "Are you tired?" The second question, beside resistance, can be rephrased to ask, "Can you walk up one flight of stairs?" It may also be helpful to clarify that they can walk up a flight of stairs without aids or resting. The third question, aerobic, can be rephrased to ask, "Can you walk one block?" The fourth question regarding illnesses can be asked and answered in multiple ways. If it seems like they are struggling to answer the question, "Do you have more than 5 illnesses?" you can also phrase the question as, "What illnesses or conditions do you have?" If the older adult you are screening begins to list conditions, write them down and count them. They may also list medications. If so, ask what they are for. Is this for arthritis, blood pressure, etc., and count the conditions that way. The final question about weight loss would be difficult for someone to know off the top of their head, since many people who have experienced weight loss have not gone through the trouble of calculating the percentage of their overall weight that has been lost. Instead, you can rephrase the question to, "Have you lost weight in the last 6 months?" If yes, follow up with, "How much weight have you lost?" You can then calculate if they have lost 5% of their body weight by dividing the total number of pounds lost by their weight before the weight loss. Weight loss is also not always concerning. So if the older adult you're screening has been purposely trying to lose weight to improve their health, that's not necessarily a concern. So you can determine if this is the case by asking, "Have you been trying to lose weight to be healthier?" and making a note on the form if so. Sarcopenia is the decrease in both muscle mass and function that may occur with aging. A couple of things to note. When an individual is considered to have sarcopenia, but they are still able to complete their activities of daily living, they are considered as being in a pre-disabled state. Also, there's an overlap between frailty and sarcopenia, and it is incredibly important to assess for both of those, as both of them can lead to physical function impairment. The SARC-F scale has been validated or shown to be accurate in several countries. It is predictive of future dependency. The scores on this scale range from 0 to 10, with a score of 4 or more indicating the presence of sarcopenia. When administering this scale, you will want to follow up each question with the corresponding response options. For example, how much difficulty do you have in lifting and carrying 10 pounds? Would you say you have no difficulty, some difficulty, a lot of difficulty, or that you are unable to lift 10 pounds? Additionally, when asking that question about strength, you may need to clarify what 10 pounds is by giving them some examples. Some good examples to use include 2 bags of flour, 2 gallons of milk, a large bottle of laundry detergent, or 3 bags of onions. Another important thing to note when administering this scale is that the older adult's responses may not match or coincide with your own observations. For example, the rise from a chair question asks how much difficulty the older adult has transferring from a chair to a bed. If you observe difficulty when they sit down or get up from the chair, but they say no or mark some, make a note of your observation on the form. The SNAC assesses older adults' risk of weight loss and malnutrition by asking questions about appetite. As indicated by the weight loss question on the Frail scale, significant weight loss is a decrease in more than 5% of the usual body weight over the last 6 to 12 months. Significant weight loss may be a cause for concern in those over 65 as it contributes to things such as memory loss, decreased immune function, decreased muscle mass and weakness, loss of function, and poor wound healing. Weight loss is also associated with increased mortality or death in older adults. It is important to screen for malnutrition, particularly in older adults living with chronic conditions that put them at an increased risk, such as cancer, diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease. Some medical conditions and medications can impact appetite, making eating difficult, changing their metabolism, or requiring dietary restrictions that make eating less appealing or less accessible. For example, when my dad was having medical issues with his kidney, his doctor recommended a diet low in sodium. For a man who considers salt a side dish to every meal, he did not find the low sodium meals appealing and did not enjoy dishes made with alternatives such as Mrs. Dash because, and I quote, it just wasn't the same. He also experienced some changes to his palate due to the medications he was on following open heart surgery years later. These dietary restrictions and changes to his taste preferences have led him to experience significant weight loss, sarcopenia, and frailty. The Simplified Nutritional Appetite Questionnaire, or SNAQ, has been validated in community-dwelling older adults, hospitalized patients, and nursing home residents. Unlike the previous two measures where higher scores indicated the presence of either frailty or sarcopenia, a lower score, specifically a score of 14 or less on the SNAQ, is predictive of weight loss over the following 6 months. Administering the SNAQ, you are interested in their typical appetite, not just how they feel today. It may be helpful to rephrase items to, would you say that you feel? For example, would you say that you feel full after eating only a few mouthfuls, full after eating about a third of a meal, full after eating over half a meal, full after eating most of the meal, or would you say that you hardly ever feel full? Before talking about the purpose of the last assessment component of the RGA, the Rapid Cognitive Screen, it is important to stress that memory loss is not normal in older adults. Early identification of a cognitive disorder allows for improved care and planning. It may be possible to reverse, prevent, or slow decline in cognition if it is found and treated early. The Rapid Cognitive Screen, or RCS, screens for cognitive impairment and declines in executive functioning. The RCS is the shortened version of the well-validated St. Louis University Mental Status Examination. It has been validated to pick up major neurocognitive disorder and mild cognitive impairment in several languages. Scores on the RCS range from 0 to 10. A score of 0 to 5 indicates possible dementia, 6 to 7 indicates possible mild cognitive impairment, and a score of 8 to 10 is normal. One thing that is important to note with this tool is that it was developed and validated with older adults. It is not necessarily a good screening tool to use with younger generations. I have had students who are not experiencing cognitive decline receive scores that indicate possible mild cognitive impairment for one simple reason. They do not know how to tell time using traditional clock face. Jimmy Kimmel did an episode of Can You Do It, dedicated simply to testing younger adults on their ability to read a clock face. If you're interested in seeing how difficult this task can be for younger generations, I suggest watching it. I just want to briefly go over some tips to use when administering the Rapid Cognitive Screen. The words that are emphasized in bold on this questionnaire are what you say to the older adult. The words that are not emphasized in bold are instructions to you. For the first question, it is a good idea to ask the older adult to repeat the items after you so you can make sure they heard them. You may also need to repeat the items if you are administering the assessment in a noisy location and they did not hear you the first time. For number 2, it is easiest to just draw a circle for the clock face on the back of the form you are using to administer the assessment. And finally, for the last question of this assessment, following the story about Jill, the very successful stockbroker, if the response you received to the question, what state did she live in, is Chicago instead of Illinois, follow their response up with, what state was Chicago in? The final part of the RGA is the question, do you have an advance directive? An advance directive includes documents such as a living will and durable power of attorney. Advanced directives are how a person communicates their desired care goals to ensure these goals are met when they are not able to express their wishes. Advanced directives aren't just for older adults. Adults of all ages should carefully consider and outline their medical treatments and end-of-life care they would be comfortable with in the event of a life-threatening injury or illness. The purpose of asking this question is to give you an opportunity to discuss the importance of completing an advanced directive with the older adult that's completing the assessment. You can refer them to their primary care doctor for more information. Local hospitals often have advanced directive forms available on their websites or by request in person. After you finish asking the questions for all the components of the RGA, you will need to calculate their total scores. If the older adult you are screening receives a score that indicates that they are at risk for frailty, sarcopenia, malnutrition, or cognitive impairment, you can inform them by saying, "The screening indicates you may be at risk for." You want to be careful with your wording since these forms only screen for potential risk. They do not diagnose. If they are at risk, the Geriatrics Division of St. Louis University has several helpful informational handouts that can be given to the older adult with more information. With any indication of risk, encourage the older adult to see their general practitioner. A good phrase to use is, "This is just the beginning of a more complete evaluation you should have with your doctor." Here are additional resources courtesy of the Geriatrics Division of St. Louis University. Included are links to where you can access the RGA on the SLU website, a training video demonstrating how to administer the assessment, as well as open source articles providing in-depth information about the components of the assessment.